Welcome to Cover to Cover BookBeat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. One of the real delights in interviewing authors is you sometimes get a chance to read a book that is both informative and absolutely delightful. And that is certainly the case with David and Susan Schultz's new book, The Joy of Costco, a treasure hunt from A to Z. The Schultzes are easily classed as super fans of the Joy at Costco warehouse. They have actually traveled 200 of Costco's 850, at least as of this morning, warehouses in 46 countries and researched the fascinating story behind Costco's success. A little bit about them. David Schultz, the author of several books, most recently about the life and times of Enrico Fermi. He has a BA from Stanford and a PhD from MIT. He's been a foreign policy specialist, investment banker, HR specialist, and an executive search recruitment professional. He spent much of his youth in San Francisco, and his parents were early members of Price Club, Costco's predecessor. Susan Schultz received a BA from the University of Pennsylvania, MBA from Columbia University, has worked at Nabisco and General Foods, and after leaving corporate America, she worked freelance making TV commercials for 13 years before joining her husband, David, in executive search consulting. She works as a professional baker for 2 years after college, grew up in Philadelphia, where she delighted in shopping at Costco with her beloved parents. She became a member of Costco in 2009, and they're both proud grandparents and avid bird watchers. We're very pleased to welcome David and Susan Schultz.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We're delighted to be here.
Thank you.
You spent quite some time putting this book together, so I'm curious, was there a specific incident or a series of incidents that triggered the desire to write this?
It's a great question. As you said, we've loved Costco for many, many years. We love the quality. We love the low price. We love the treasure hunt aspect of it. You never know what you're going to find there. And when we first met, we realized very quickly that we both shared this love of Costco. But it took till 2016 before we started to talk about this. I had just finished the Fermi book and was looking around for other things to write. And Susan and I were taking a long walk from New York's Chinatown up to where we live on the Upper West Side. And she kept on swatting away each idea. She would say, that's boring, or no one's going to read that, or it doesn't involve enough travel. And finally, around Times Square, she turns to me and she says, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we write a book together about Costco? We both love it. It's a great company. We want to find out more about it. We can travel the world. We might even be able to get to China. And so that's the germination of the idea.
But there's just a few problems with it, if I can jump in here. The first is I'd never written a book, so I'm not sure why I thought I could. The second one, in 2016, travel was a lot more simple because there was no COVID. And the third and most important issue is that Costco is inherently modest and not at all keen. They were not keen on having a book written about them. Basically, what we planned to do is to brag about them, and that made them very uncomfortable. It took us 2 years to meet Jim Sinegal, the surviving co-founder, and Craig Jelinek, the CEO, and then it took another 3 years to convince them that we were writing the book. We were continuing to work on the book. And at that point, we got this amazing an email from Jim Sinegal saying, listen, we understand you're going ahead with it. Why don't you come for a meeting? We'd like to help you. So we did this independently financially, but after 2021, they opened the floodgates, introduced us to all the surviving founding officers, let us take a tour of the hot dog factory. We were just in heaven. We got to go behind the scenes in Japan and watch sushi being made. I mean, it was, for Costco lovers, it was a lot of fun, but a lot of travel.
Wow. Well, indeed. You've structured the book like an encyclopedia. You've alphabetized the sections from A to Z, and you said you did that to reflect the random treasure hunt experience you get shopping at Costco. And I'm curious, was that always your intent, or did that format evolve as you did your research?
I'm proud to tell you that it happened as soon as our literary agents, Jim Levine and Courtney Paganelli at Levine Greenberg Roston, suggested that format. When we first met them in 2019, we were planning to do a corporate history, which might have been a little more boring. Yeah. And Jim and Courtney are just tremendous support. They both are big Costco fans, and they pointed out to us that we should do this format. It was Courtney's idea, actually, and that we should target the book at people like us, fellow Costco members. And there's a lot of them. There are 130 million members. So that was their idea.
Well, I have to say, in my particular situation, we live 76 miles from the nearest Costco and haven't considered being members. But after reading The Joy of Costco, we're definitely going to be members because I have to support a company that does this many good things. So I had no idea the amazing corporate culture behind their corporate culture. The absolute shocking thing is in this age of massive corporate greed, Costco cares more about doing the right thing than making money, and they're making good money by doing the right thing. Why don't most more companies follow this model?
It's a very good question. Costco strongly believes that doing the right thing will help them make money. I mean, they have 4 business principles: obey the law, or 5 business principles: obey the law, look after your members, look after your employees, look after your vendors, and then if you do all that, the shareholders will really benefit. Now, that's a very easy sort of creed to articulate, but it takes enormous discipline to do this the right way and to do it consistently. Because in retailing, there's a natural tendency, and this is true, and this is not a criticism, this is just a fact, that there's a natural tendency to try to raise prices over time when you can. And Costco has been able, through a very powerful corporate culture, to go the opposite way. When they move prices, they're moving prices down generally. There are some exceptions, obviously, but this is their business model, and it is very hard to do it properly. In fact, in 1982, when the predecessor to Price Club was going public, a number of research analysts on Wall Street began to look at the model very carefully, and one of them, who we cite in the book, a guy named Joe Ellis from Goldman Sachs, wrote a white paper, a research paper on the company. And he pointed out that this requires enormous discipline. You can only keep a very limited number of items on the shelves at any given time. In Costco's case, it's 3,800. What that means is that if you want to add a new product, you typically have to take something out. And when you take something out, you end up rotating through the warehouse, which is why you never know what you're going to find on a given day. But it does take great discipline and a huge logistics effort to keep costs down.
And one of the things that's really interesting is compare it to a supermarket. In the supermarket, the products come in, they're price stamped often, they're placed on the shelf lovingly, product by product. In Costco, the first time an employee touches a single jar of pickles is when it's placed on the cash register conveyor belt, and is scanned. So there's just a tremendous cost savings involved in this. We were joking around about having a fake blurb on the back of the book from Napoleon saying, if I'd had Costco's logistics system, I would have won the Battle of Waterloo.
There you go. That's the professionals care about logistics, not tactics or strategy. Right. This may be a good place to tell the salmon story.
Oh gosh, well, the salmon story is legendary within the company and was used over and over again to try to inculcate the culture. They started selling salmon pretty soon after they went into fresh food, which was 1987. And their first idea was to sell the salmon whole. You stick the whole salmon in a container and you sell it that way. And they began to realize that people didn't like to go through all the process of preparing the salmon, so they cut off the fins and the tail. And they were able, because of the volume that they achieved on that, they were able to lower the price. And then they thought, well, what can we do to make the price even lower? And it's completely counterintuitive because it costs more money. They decided to do a fillet, and then they decided to skin it. And so you now have what is the iconic Costco Kirkland signature salmon, farmed salmon, that goes for, I think, $9.99 a pound or $10.99 a pound, something like that.
Around the world.
And it requires a lot of work to present it the way they do, but they have been able to lower the price over and over again. And that is that story is so important that it's in the lobby of their home office in Seattle, in Issaquah. And it's also in the lobby of all the regional offices around the country and also all over the world. So it is a very important story.
Another corollary story is the pickle story,
yes.
Which is that somebody was returning a jar of pickles, and I think initially maybe somebody wanted to give them a hard time. And the culture of Costco is take the damn jar of pickles back. You don't want to lose a member over a jar of pickles. It's called the pickle story. And it's just If you have a return policy, you have a return policy. Take the products back. The only exception to that is electronics, which are only returnable for 90 days, and hopefully our book. No, I'm kidding. Our book can be returned as well. You can return anything at Costco. They stand behind their products, even the membership.
You also touch upon the fact that somebody brought a grand piano 13 years previously and returned it because they hadn't learned to play it, and they got their money back. That's follow through on a grand scale. I have to tell you something that jumped out at me more than anything else. The company had no layoffs during COVID. They sent their 65-year-old people over home with full pay, and they paid time and a half for the people that worked. This is unheard of.
But once again, yeah, absolutely. But once again, it's not altruism. Their view is that if you create the conditions to retain employees, those employees will be, loyal to you, but they'll also work harder. They'll be better at their jobs. The whole process will be good for members and for shareholders.
And when you walk into Costco, I mean, I refer to it as my happy place, but the employees feel that way too. And that's really, it comes across, really does. And another really impressive example is Shanghai. I think in 2022, in spring, the whole city of Shanghai was locked down for 3 months. Costco had at the time, I think 5 warehouses there. They didn't lay anybody off. 3 months, nobody came to work. Everyone got full pay. That's amazing.
I kept looking more and more for the examples, and I take notes when I read books, and I've never heard of this before. When they opened their first warehouse, they actually invited the Teamsters Union to come in and organize, and the worker says, "No, we don't need it. They're treating us so much better."
The Teamsters, I'm sure, were shocked to be invited in by Jim Sinegal and Dick DeCercio. They were totally shocked, and sort of they came and pitched up their table, and 2 weeks later, Jim noticed that they were gone, and they called and said, "Well, no one seems to want to join a union."
Something that's not in the book. Jim Sinegal was incredibly generous with his time. We gave Costco voluntarily full review and approval of the book, and Jim graciously read every word of it. Poor guy. At one point we were in his office having a meeting, and he pulled out this binder he has with all the sales figures, and he glanced down at the page for Seoul, South Korea, and he was looking at something, and his brow furrowed, and he said, "They're making too much money. I'm going to have to talk to the CEO about this." He was concerned the profit was too high. We were also at a meeting once where somebody was talking about increasing the price of a Christmas item by $1 because of shipping costs and this and that. From the back of the room, a room filled with 100 warehouse managers, the most senior person raised his hand and said, "Sometimes it's okay not to make so much money." It's unheard of.
And, sometimes for people who don't understand the business model, Wall Street analysts will sometimes criticize them for this. But the fact is, they absolutely require high volume in order to make this work. They need to sell a lot of product because the margins are so small. And their fear is that if they begin to raise prices, the volume is going to go down. And they're very worried about that. And it will undermine the loyalty that members have, because members know that when they walk into a Costco, they're going to get the best price available.
This all goes back to a man named Saul Price. We talk about, there's a brief corporate history in the beginning of the book before you get to the treasure hunt part. Saul Price, our first sentence, I believe, is, "It all began with a man named Saul Price." We won't ruin the fun and tell you what the story is, but Saul, at his first company called FedMart, Saul actually was known from time to time to put a sign up that said, "Buy your sugar at the supermarket, it's a better price." Who does that? These are crazy people. They're lovely people.
I've got a few more things that just blew me away, because nobody does this. After 3 months, part-timers get benefits, health and life insurance, paid leave, 401k with a company providing a 50% match for the contributions, and their kids are eligible for company college scholarships.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why so many part-timers end up going full-time. You have
the workforce is 50-50, part-time and full-time. Mm-hmm. And they all generally, they become converted.
Their objective is to convert the part-time to the full-time. And you have no idea how many senior executives we've talked to. And we start off by saying, "So when did you start? How did you start?" and they'll say, well, I started part-time pushing carts, or I started part-time in the food court, or part-time running forklifts overnight. And I just thought this was a great company, and why should I work anywhere else? So that's quite common among the senior echelons.
Yeah, we talked about this being the back half of our life. We're grandparents. We could have been retired by now, but we're not. And we sort of joked around. We did self-publish this book. We took a pretty big risk. And we joked around that if the book didn't work out, we'd get jobs at Costco instead.
Well, it's great because you can tell that you got access in the end, because there's all sorts of wonderful inside things that you would not have been able to do as outside reporters. I have to talk about the hot dog and lay that story out for me. It's wonderful.
Well, they've been selling hot dogs since 1984, I think. They started off in Portland when a fellow named Warm Wonderful Gene had a hot dog cart, and he knew the warehouse manager at the time, and said, "Hey, listen, I have an idea. Why don't I pitch up at the front of your warehouse, and I can sell hot dogs to people coming in and going out." And the general manager and Warm Wonderful Gene negotiated $1.50 plus a soda for this treat. And the CEO and the chairman of Costco came down relatively soon thereafter, and they were stunned that this was happening. And I think one of them said, "You should have checked with headquarters," and what they call the home office. And the other was sitting there eating a hot dog and looked at his partner and said, "Hey, don't give him a hard time. These are great. We should do this all over the place." So they began to roll it out. They sourced from Hebrew National and Sinai, and they were all kosher hot dogs. And then sort of the 2003, 2004 period, I think, both of those companies were bought by large conglomerates, and it became harder and harder for Costco to maintain the price at $1.50. And in fact, at one point, Craig Jelinek, who was then the head of merchandising, I think, or the COO at the time, went into Jim Sinegal, who was the CEO, and said, "Jim, it looks like we're going to have to raise the price." And Jim looked at him and said, "If you do that, I will effing kill you. Go and figure it out." And so they did what has become a model for a number of other businesses. They brought the entire project in-house. They now, source the beef, source the pork for hot dogs that are sold in Asia. They process all that in a meat processing facility, one in Chicago, one in California, that they have total control over. They see exactly what the costs are, and they know how to keep those costs low to keep the hot dog at $1.50 and soda.
I got curious, and I looked up the inflation factor from, I think it was 1985 actually, to now. And if they had just raised it to keep up with inflation, that hot dog and soda would be over $4 today.
Oh yeah, and you go to a baseball stadium, Major League Baseball stadium, and you can pay over $10 for a hot dog. So this is really, people love that about the company. It's one of the most popular things in the system.
And it's a myth that it's a loss leader for Costco. Same thing with the rotisserie chicken. That's a myth that's a loss leader. Everything in Costco is marked up at most only 14% above cost. That's how they do it.
And it's volume, and they make a little bit of money, and they make very, very high volume.
And speaking of volumes, Costco sells 7 times more hot dogs than all Major League Baseball stadiums combined. David did the math on that. It was a lot of work.
That's another great stat. This book is so full of bits and pieces that you just go, "Ooh, that," and you turn the page and there's another one. I have to give some credit to the designer, whoever laid it out for you. Did an awesome job on that one.
That's Bonnie Siegler at 8.5 New York, 8.5 New York. She's a magician. The look of the book is entirely Bonnie's. It was our idea to do, once we took our agent's suggestion to do the A to Z, we found Bonnie and her sidekick, as I like to call him, Andy Capelli. They're just magical. The look of it is all theirs. And then Martin Hargreaves, British illustrator that we found, it has a look of whimsy that's just perfect for the book, we think. We're really, really eternally grateful to all three of them.
It is. Well, I can tell you solved one of my Christmas gift giving problems right now, so thank you for that. Um, oh man, what else was I going to say? There's so many things. I mean, the numbers are so huge. They sell half the world's cashews, sold 4 billion eggs in 2016 at a rate of 11 million eggs a day. They were the first retailer to commit to sell only cage-free chickens. Their commitment to sustainability is huge, along with their profitability.
Yes, it is. I mean, you know, they got criticism on cage-free eggs for not moving fully cage-free faster. But look, you know, they were buying 4 billion eggs a year. And in 2016, guess how many cage-free eggs there were in the United States at that time? About 4 billion. So they would have completely sopped up all supply of cage-free eggs. And they knew they couldn't do that. They shouldn't do that. It should be available through other outlets. So they had a program to go in phases. And that phase is almost complete in the United States and in Mexico and in Canada. It's a little harder to do this in places like Asia, where there is no tradition of, or there's a new tradition of cage-free egg laying, but they're moving in that direction. They're very, very concerned about sustainability. When you operate at this level, if you take you know, 1/4 gram off of the plastic top on their iconic water bottles, the Kirkland Signature water bottles, you're saving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastic a year. So they look at the world that way. They're always trying to improve sustainability. Most recently, they've decided to offer their Kirkland Signature nut products in bags, which reduce the amount of plastic considerably over the old jars that they used to use.
One of the things that impressed me, it's something we never think about because we don't deal with such volumes, is making square containers for some of their products, which means they can pack more of them in a smaller space, which means fewer truck trips, which means less carbon.
They save something like, when they moved from the round to the square containers on their nuts, this was a while ago, they estimated that they saved 400 truck trips a year. And it's only gotten more. And I think with the plastic bags now, they must be saving hundreds and hundreds over what they were saving. So yeah, they're very, very concerned about it. And they have long-range plans and commitments. You can look at it on the web. They're very concerned about humane practices with respect to animal raising and slaughtering. They take it deeply seriously.
The thing I like to say is Costco does the right thing even when no one is looking. And that's really it. We started out writing a fan book for fellow fans, but it's really, in my mind, a great example of how you can be a decent company. It's hard. It takes, you know, hard work and discipline and great employees, but it can be done. It's kind of important to think about in this day and age.
It is. And there are a couple of other tidbits that are not only tangentially related to Costco that I found interesting. One of the things we talked about the coffin business, and I learned that Orthodox Judaism does not allow any metal in a coffin, and so Costco has coffins. But who knew?
That's correct.
Not me, but yeah.
We wanted to put the sort of fun facts in the book, throughout the book, that may not have anything directly to do with walking into the warehouse, but that people would find interesting. We found it fascinating how cashews grow. You know, there's one cashew grows per cashew fruit, and that has to be removed by hand. And there are something like 2 million individual small farms in Africa that help supply Costco's cashew needs. They obviously go through intermediaries because they can't deal with 2 million individual farms directly. But to the extent that they can deal directly with vendors, they almost always opt to do that. Yeah, we loved putting those little facts in.
Here's another one that I loved. I'm trading back and forth with you because I'm so excited about the book. But the Kirkland Signature products sales were greater than those of all of the Campbell soup, all the Kellogg cereals, and all the Hershey's candy combined.
That's right. They have about 1,000 Kirkland Signature items. They're across every part of the warehouse. In fact, my hearing aids are from Costco. They're Kirkland Signature hearing aids, and you know, they're $1,500 instead of what they would have been $10,000 elsewhere. And in fact, when they worked just great, but when we were in South Korea, I had a problem with one of them. So we went into the warehouse first thing. We were doing that anyway. I speak no Korean. And the gentleman helping me in the hearing center doesn't speak any English. He replaced the inner workings of the hearing aid for free. It was out of warranty. It's just Costco.
What Kirkland's signature stands for, or at least what they try to do, and they usually succeed, is that they will not enter production for a product under Kirkland's signature unless they can offer it to members at the same quality or better for a lower price. And so they've from time to time they've launched a Kirkland signature item, and they realize they can't do it as well or better than the national brand, so they withdraw it. I think that was true with mac and cheese. Yeah. So mac and cheese, they launched, and toothpaste, they launched both of them. And they realized as the project progressed that they weren't doing a better job than the national brand, so they pulled them. They're very disciplined about that.
The other thing that occurred to me is that I found really startling is that they really enforce their vendors to be good to their employees and check them. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's a business audit that every vendor goes through to make sure that the products are being produced in the most efficient manner and the safest manner. But then there's a social audit, and they come in and they look at how the employees are treated, what the work conditions are, and sometimes they'll work with vendors to help them pass the social audit. The social audit is typically done by an independent auditing firm. It's not sort of inside, because they understand that it could be seen as a conflict of interest.
Right.
So they go with an external auditor who comes in and makes sure that wages are good, that benefits are good, that working conditions are good, and they take that very seriously.
Yeah, and I think that one thing, they also protect the vendors, and as I understand that they will not allow a vendor to have more than 25% of their business with them, so they don't get trapped as some other giant chain out there does with their vendors.
Well, actually, that's one of the reasons we decided ultimately to sell the book in broad distribution. It turns out Costco decided to sell the book in the warehouse 1 month ago. That was after we had already manufactured 100,000 books without any guarantee from anybody. But we decided to sell it in broad distribution for two reasons. One is because to follow that model of that, we shouldn't rely on one company for more than 25% of our business, but also, we have a lot of friends who know we're Costco fans and they don't have Costco memberships, or you don't have a Costco membership, but you want to buy the book for somebody, then you can't get it. So we wanted to make it available at large book chains, national chains, and also independent bookstores just everywhere.
And online.
It's also on Amazon.
All right, let's see how much more fun stuff. Here's another little tidbit I have to share. Costco tires filled with nitrogen, which retains its pressure longer than compressed air and extends the life of the tires.
Who knew? Exactly. I didn't know.
Exactly. Or one time, okay, one more, and I'll let you do some stuff, but I'm so excited about the contents of the book. A tire manufacturer gave Costco $1 million rebate, and rather than just throw it in the bottom line, they researched all the people who bought those tires and gave them the rebate.
And they did that without checking with the home office.
Because they knew there was no need to. This was a Costco thing to do.
It was in Canada, and it's just, do the right thing.
And can you imagine how loyal those members are, having received a check for $150 or whatever it was
out of the blue, a surprise. Yeah.
I bought a new laptop a couple of years ago from Costco, and it was too overwhelming to set it up and to use it. And we were in the middle of the book writing, so I said, okay, I'll do it later. I returned it almost immediately, and about 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail asking was everything okay and why had I returned it. That's really. It's just great.
Yeah.
So we traveled to at least one warehouse in every one of the 46 US states and to at least one warehouse in every one of the 13 other countries. It totaled up to 220,000 miles. We went to 200 warehouses. One of the fun parts for us of this was travel. Obviously, we like travel. But what's interesting is the food courts are different around the world. So in Iceland, where, by the way, 75% of the Icelanders are members of Costco, very smart people. In Iceland, you can get real Italian gelato at the food court. And in Australia, you can get something called a butter chicken pie, which is a kind of Indian delicacy. And then in Korea, I'm not going to say it's the best chocolate frozen yogurt you'll ever have in your life, but it's really a contender. It's delicious. I mean, it's worth going to South Korea for this chocolate soft serve ice cream.
And you can also get mushroom soup at the Seoul Korea food court, which is sort of strange because we don't think of the American food courts as offering soup, but they do.
And about 40% of the products around the world are regional. So in Alaska, you'll get, reindeer sausage. And then in Taiwan, the rotisserie chicken has its head still on because that's how they do it in Taiwan. So it's really interesting to see the differences. You always know you're in Costco, but it's always a little bit different. And the buildings vary as well. The warehouse in Iceland has got grass on the roof. There's one in Mexico, in Mexico City, in an area called Santa Fe, that has a huge garden on top of it. It's a contemplative garden. It's got a skateboard park. It's got paddleball, like a bunch of athletic facilities. Half of the cost of building this building was the garden, which is open to the public, and half of the cost was the warehouse below it.
I need to kind of wrap this up a little bit, but the first thing I want to ask is, what do you hope the people take away with them when they close the book?
I think several things. First of all, that this is a company that does the right thing when no one's looking, and that's very important. It's very successful on a business model that believes that if you treat your members right, you treat your employees right, treat your vendors right, shareholders will benefit. And the fact is that Costco stock has I think annual compound return of something like 17%, which is fantastic. What else do we want? I think
if they enjoyed the book, what we'd really love them to do is to put a nice review about it on Amazon or Goodreads. That would be really generous. We self-published. We're eternally grateful to the 22 publishers who turned us down. We got offers from 2 publishers, which were sufficiently underwhelming that one Saturday afternoon, while we were on New Jersey Transit, which is a local train around here in New York, we turned to each other and said, "Oh gosh, let's just do it ourselves." That was a pretty big move. We're grateful now.
We had no idea what that involved, involving at the scale that we decided we wanted to do it. You need to find a printer who's able to do what we wanted them to do. And as you can see from the book, it's a very complicated graphic printing job. Number 2, we needed to find a distributor. Finding a distributor when you only have one title is very, very difficult. But we needed a distributor because of the volume we were printing and because of the reach we wanted to get. And Ingram Pacific Group West, Publishing Group West, was willing to take us on because they believed in the book, and we're very grateful to them. There are just a lot of things involved in little decisions, like how many books should be in a carton. You don't think that that's an important question, but it's very important. It turns out to be an extremely important question. Those are the kinds of things that what kind of paper to use, what kind of binding to use.
I think the other thing I'd like people to think is, or take away from is, that you can be grandparents entering the back half of your life and have a passion for something and pursue it. And if you stick with it, maybe one day, 7 years later, you'll have something that you've completed. And it took a lot of cooperation from Costco, but follow your dreams, I think is the thing I'd like to say.
I mean, I think we have discovered that obstacles will come into your path when you least expect it. And sometimes they'll be relatively trivial and easy to fix. Sometimes they're going to be major. Sometimes, you think, oh my God, is the project finished? And if you just keep on working at it, you find solutions. So for anyone who is, has the crazy idea to publish their own book about something, be aware that you're gonna find some challenges along the way, but persistence really, really pays off.
Gonna run out of time here with my 40 minutes for Zoom, but I just want to thank you so much. Our guests today have been David and Susan Schultz. The book is The Joy of Costco, a treasure hunt from A to Z, one of the best I read in a very long time. Thank you both.
Roger, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.